Morning, folks. Russell here, coming to you from the shop. What we got going on today is I've got to do some repair on a radio, factory radio, for a 2006 BMW 328 E-90 chassis. These radios are notorious for having the pixels, the backlighting pixels, go bad in them. It's usually from vehicles that were left out in the sun for a long period of time. This isn't a mileage required repair or even a time. It's just simply how hot did the interior of the car get for exterior periods of time. In the past, we've been able to send these units off and have them repaired. Due to some of the global part shortages, nobody can get the repair part anymore, which is the actual screen itself for this particular model. Now, the E-90 chassis has two different manufacturers for the radio. One of them is Alpine, made in Hungary. That's the one we cannot get the replacement part for. Most of the E-90s, so 08 later, almost all of them, have a radio that's not manufactured by Alpine. I don't remember the manufacturer on hand, but they're made in the Czech Republic. Not only can we can get the repair part for those, but that part doesn't work in the Alpine. So right now, the only fix for this problem in an Alpine radioed E-90 is to find another working one and change the faceplate. About half the time you can just plug and play the old radio in and it'll work. In this case, we found one, plugged it in, it lights up and it'll tune and everything, but I don't get any audio output, but I do get the door chime. So what that's telling me is this replacement radio is coded for the Logic 7, which uses fiber optic for the audio out, but this vehicle isn't Logic 7, it has a standard analog amplifier. So I've got to swap these faceplates out, and I can show you here real quick. We've already removed the faceplate on the bad unit. This is a bad faceplate. There's no need to go in and actually remove the screen piece. All you have to do is change out the faceplate. There's no coating on this piece. So I've already removed it off the existing radio from the car, which we know works. We were getting audio out of it. We just couldn't see what we were doing. The screen was completely blank. So what I've got to do is remove this faceplate and install it on the other unit. So I'm going to move the camera around to get a little over-shoulder view, and we'll get started on this. All right, I think I've got a decent view where y'all can see what's going to go on here. So like I said, we've already removed the faceplate off the existing radio, so I'm just going to set it off to the side for later reassembly. I won't be needing this part at all, and I've already pulled the knobs off it because they were actually in pretty good shape. One of the things I did notice, and this is one of the little, how you can tell, if you will, that it's got Logic 7. I have, and this is anecdotal, but I have yet to see an E-90 chassis radio that was not coded for Logic 7 that had the chrome knobs. So that was my first clue that this probably wouldn't work. If it's got the chrome around the knob, it's probably coded for Logic 7. So first thing I've got to do is pull those knobs off, set them aside. Disassembly on these radios isn't difficult, but it's not necessarily easy either. You've got to remove, you have to remove the mounting tab here, and it's always a little fun because these screws are very tight. I've got to get my glasses. The last thing you want to do is strip the head off on one of these screws. It gets to be very difficult to remove them. So we'll set that screw aside. And the whole screw and mount sets aside. Okay, once the arm's off, there's 5 screws that hold this heatsink on. We have to remove those screws, and I've already pulled them out. I had to go check the door real quick, and the heatsink comes off, and you can notice that there's thermal compound, just like you have on a computer or CPU or whatever, between the heatsink and the actual pads. So we'll set that off to the side. I've got the screw set off to the side already, and the screw that we're going to get to take the faceplate off, the reason we have to pull the heatsink, that screw is right in here where I've got the screwdriver on. I don't see that. It's a very small screw, so I'm going to start pulling that off right now. And once I get this screw out, then we'll come back around to the rest of the easy ones and get those. And just like doing anything else, just work slow and methodical. Try not to strip these screw heads. They're very fragile. And that screws out. So now that screws out, I've only got 4 more to do. And this whole unit will come off. Well, I should say come off. There's more to it than just that. I wish I had a magnet. A slightly magnetized screwdriver usually will do. There we go. And then 3 across the top. Now be very careful pulling this open. There's a ribbon cable that we have to disconnect. You can see the ribbon cable right there. So it's simple enough. You just have to flip it open and the ribbon cable comes out. So I'm done with this unit. We'll set it off to the side. We'll bring this one over. So let me get it set right. Now I got to slip that ribbon in, line it up and lock it back down. It's not hard to do. It's just delicate. Oop. There we go. And there's little locating tabs on the bottom of the faceplate. So, looks like we're set. I'll run these screws back in. And if you're doing this kind of work, always keep track, mentally at least, of what screws go where. Some of these screws are coarse thread for running into the plastic. Some of them are machine screws. It's very tight threading. You definitely don't want to get them mixed up. Alright. I'm going to put this one in. And the fun one. it helps to have a screwdriver with a little bit of magnetism on it, just enough to hold that screw. I know some people get kind of freaked out about magnetism in circuit boards, but in the case of these car stereos like this, especially they're out of the car, been unplugged for days, so and the minuscule amount of magnetism on some of these screwdrivers is fine. All right, so the faceplate's attached. Now we've got to put the heat sink back on. And so basically, I didn't remove any of the heat sink paste. We just left it all intact. So just have to get that lined up. And there are two short machine screws, and the short ones go in the top corners and actually hold the heatsink to the chassis. The three longer screws, and when you pulled them out you would have noticed thermal compound on them, but the three longer screws actually go through into the heatsink, into the heat pads. And then the last thing, or next to last thing I should say, is reinstalling the mount tab. Shaky hands. Too much coffee this morning. Just be very slow and methodical running these screws in. You don't want to strip the threads in case you ever have to take it apart again. All right, faceplate's on, locating tabs in. The last thing to do is reinstall the knobs, and then we'll test it in the car. That is the faceplate replacement for a BMW E-90 chassis. Alpine CD-73, which is the professional radio. I'll pause the video here real quick, and then we'll get this installed in the car and see how it works. Now, as far as installing the radio, Simple enough. Plug the electrical connectors in. Make sure it's good and seated. And there's 2 screws down here. And the easy way to tell if you're going to pull these out, if you have the Alpine CD-73, these mount tabs are metal. The Czech Republic made radio, those are plastic. So that's the easiest way to tell right off the bat. It's simple as a couple of screws to lock those in place, and then you just push the HVAC panel back in place and it's done. But I've already tested it, I know it works, but just to show you guys, I've got pixels again, and the radio works. I'm not going to play it long because of YouTube copyright stuff. That's it as far as radio repair goes. I'll finish getting this installed, and we'll get this car off to the detailer and be able to get it up and get it sold. Simple enough repair. It's just too bad that the global parts shortage is even affecting repairing some of these radios. I can't get those screens anymore. If it was a Czech Republic radio, you can buy that screen all day long, or even send it off to a myriad of different places to have them repaired. But the Alpine ones, we can't get the parts anymore, so the only way to do it is we've got to find a working radio and then swap the faceplates, because they are coded to the specifics of the car. That's all I got for now. If you like this content, go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, and we'll see you guys later. More to follow.